So, part three, picking up where I left off. After my experience on the show, I came home and then began to travel and sing. I would go and sing the national anthem at sporting events. And, guess who was right there with me every single time in such huge support of me? Tabitha. We had not ever talked about what happened during the fallout. It was just brushed under the rug for the family's sake. So if they were back together, then it just made things easier to accept that and just, move forward. She pretty quickly gained her ground again, as she would come to my events in such support. She would even ask me to do her hair like mine, so I would oblige. And we were then twinning again. Within a couple months, Tabitha became a permanent fixture in our family, as she and my family member were married after a 3-week engagement. Wow. So she was now in the family. And even though things seemed normal, I couldn't help but feel something brewing underneath the surface of our relationship. I couldn't quite put a finger on it, but it was like this feeling of dread. So she became very distant and evasive. Her lying increased exponentially. Something was off. Sometimes she'd be in a good mood. Other times she would look absolutely miserable and disconnected. And I would never know, what mood I would get when she would be around. So something I have discovered now is a narcissist and Jezebel has unpredictable mood swings. They are prone to emotional drama. So you never know what might displease them or set them off. They're easily triggered. That's a word we hear a lot now. They become upset at any signs of independence and self-affirmation, and they turn agitated if you disagree with their views or fail to meet their expectations. That's the truth. So I saw that a lot with her at that time, even though I didn't know what I was dealing with. What I now know is that all of the feelings of resentment that she had against me during the time that I had opposed their relationship during their breakup, they were about to come to the surface. The truth of the matter is a Jezebel is extremely vindictive and vengeful. If they feel slighted in the least bit, and in my experience, even as silly as her feeling slighted that I went and auditioned for a singing competition when that was always her dream, she was about to make her anger known. At that time, I had met my now husband, and we were married in a small ceremony in December of 2007. She was unable to make the trip. My family member did. Because my husband and I had a small ceremony, our plan was to have a big wedding celebration in the spring of 2008, a few months later. So those few months were full of planning for myself, and the excitement grew as our family was involved in the planning. I was so excited to finally experience my dream wedding, which I had dreamt about my entire life. I couldn't wait to have that moment with my husband at the altar, all dressed in our beautiful attire and surrounded by our nearest and dearest family and friends. I looked forward to having all of our families present, including many extended family members from out of town. So what a glorious weekend it was going to be. Tabitha was one of my bridesmaids, and I remember the day that we went to try on our dresses. Everybody was super excited. Excitement was in the air, almost. someone wasn't in the spirit, I should say. There was something wrong with Tabitha. She looked absolutely miserable, and the impression she gave off was that she did not want to be there. Her mind was elsewhere. I remember asking myself why she seemed so upset and distant when everyone else was so excited. Had I done something to upset her? I found myself asking that question over and over again throughout our 15-year relationship. The truth of the matter is, due to the extreme self-absorption of the narcissistic Jezebel, they will always seek to be the center of attention. They can easily get agitated if they think that they are being wronged, not given enough attention, or slighted in any way. So there was no reason for Tabitha to be so upset, and I didn't understand it at the time. So, I just told myself that, maybe she was on her period and wasn't feeling well, But even so, I didn't let that drag me down, as the rest of my bridal party, had so much joy and excitement for my husband and I. Then came the weekend I had been waiting for my entire life. The day of our rehearsal and dinner, my bridesmaids and I were decorating the wedding venue, including Tabitha, and our rehearsal was only hours away, and extended family members had begun to arrive in town. What happened next, I can only describe in one word: unbelievable. With just a few hours to spare, some extremely difficult news was exposed, which I'll just say took the attention off of my wedding and turned it towards what had been ongoing in her relationship for several months prior to it, which she herself decided to expose at that moment. So she didn't say a word to any of us. She just left out a diary at home and open and ready for my family member to find it when he got home from work and read it. So I got the horrible, hysterical phone call from him. I couldn't believe what was happening. I was reeling from the horrible news that my devastated family member showed up to our wedding location with, which also meant that I was in short a bridesmaid. So I had to figure out who else could use that dress and stand next to me right before my rehearsal dinner, in addition to the horror that I saw of how this ripped my loved one completely apart. The talk of that weekend was no longer about my wedding, but of what Tabitha had just exposed about her own marital relationship. The discussion around the rehearsal and reception dinner tables went from wedded bliss to divorce. Instead of tears of joy, there were tears of sorrow and anger. Instead of focusing on the vows, the focus was on the breaking of them. Instead of feeling total joy and anticipation for the beautiful life that my husband and I would share forever, I had feelings of absolute agony for my family member, whose life had just been ripped apart, and the tears he shed while listening to the vows that we read. All of her pent-up frustration and aggression came out in the most vengeful, cold, and calculated way possible. The truth of the matter is that a narcissistic Jezebel has a complete lack of empathy. They don't give much, if any, thought to the feelings or well-being of other people. They don't care when you're going through a hard time. They don't care if they have ruined one of the most important moments in your life, because they don't think about how their actions affect others. This was exactly what had happened. So let's see, where am I at? Almost 10 minutes. I guess I could go a little bit longer. That's exactly what happened. I was stunned. How could my friend, who happened to be in my inner familiar circle, do this to our entire family? It was so incredibly devastating and embarrassing. Of course, I was so upset for my family member because of the immense pain that they were in, and talk about the calculated and absolutely cold way that she exposed herself in an effort to destroy her husband in such a public way on my wedding weekend. So the pain and anger were palpable, but she was completely unfazed. I didn't know how we would recover after that. I hoped that it would, to be honest, I hoped that it would be over. Hadn't we suffered enough? It wasn't over. The unbelievable control and manipulation were extremely evident at that point. They remained married. Okay, so I guess I'll end this one here, and part 4 will take it from here.